If you're prone for the shiny object syndrome, that you're always looking out for the next productivity tool that might help you to overcome any friction and anxiety, this video is for you, because it's usually not the lack of tools in your life, but the lack of an understanding of your productivity system, which is tool agnostic. And in this video, we will merge both together, getting the clarity about our tool stack that we use every day and how it fits into your tool agnostic concepts and workflows in your life. Let's dive into this. Here's one of the most important things to understand your productivity system end to end, because eventually this map here will represent your productivity system, and that's why it's so crucial. This map will tell you if you have any tool redundancies or gaps. So this ICOR framework is a Venn diagram. It's overlapping circles of different parts of your productivity system. We have the PKM, Personal Knowledge Management, PPM, Personal Project Management or Task Management, BPM, Business Project Management, and BKM, Business Knowledge Management. Another way to look at this Venn diagram is to split it into the following parts. On the left, you have the personal area of your productivity system. On the right, you have the business part of your productivity system. On the top, you have the tools relevant to information, and on the bottom, you have the tools relevant for action. And when we talk about business, we mean by business anything that you share with a team or with clients, or how to organize your business. Even if you're a solopreneur, for example, in the beginning, I was a solopreneur and I still was using a tool like ClickUp as the business part to organize myself, to realize the different hats that I'm wearing, and then eventually onboard people and scale the business. And that's why having this in mind is always key, no matter how many people working in your company. And by thinking about the tools that you have and lay them out on this map, this will give you the clarity. You could do this on a piece of paper, but we have a digital version that makes these things much simpler. So you just open up the side panel and then search tools. You start searching for the tools that you use. So for example, the PKA folder is something I can search for. I can also search for ClickUp, Todoist, Calendar. And you see all these tools get added to this tool tray. This just means they are not mapped yet. It will become your tool stack the moment you place them in here. And you do this by simply dragging and dropping them onto the map. Here I placed now the PKA Vault on here. ClickUp I place here, and you see these batches appearing, BPM and now both BKM, BPM. If you move it here, even 3. And in the center, all 4. So this means if you place a tool in the center, you use this tool for all these 4 areas of your productivity system. So in our case, we are using ClickUp only for business knowledge management and business project management. It contains information that we share with others outside from our personal folder, or our personal work. If I get tasks from work, I would go here to work on it. It's like you being in a meeting, talking about a project, you get some tasks, you go back to your desk. Now you think for yourself, how do I plan out the tasks during the week? How do I organize myself? How do I get them done? That's where I do the thinking process, PKM, and the planning for myself in the PPM area. So for example, I could use Todoist, where I have my private tasks as well, and then I have ClickUp. So now we have the Google Calendar where I see the meetings that I have, and we have Gmail that I place here because it can contain several things. BKM, because it is business knowledge, if the team is communicating with me, if a client is reaching out via email, all these things is considered business knowledge. But it's also PKM if I'm signed up to newsletters or anything that I'm interested in, or any personal conversations that I have. And also it's considered PPM, task management, because by going through the inbox, there might be emails that are very quickly to handle. And that's a type of task management that you're doing there. We have the email management like a pro course where we dive deeper into this. But this is how you think about how to place these tools. What am I using the tools for? What area is covered? So I use a lot more tools than these, but this is a good starting point now. So I want to search for something like Superhuman and talk about satellite apps. What we have here now are the core applications. This means whenever you place a tool inside any of these circles, it is hard to remove them from your system. If you remove Gmail or your email account from your productivity system, you probably lose decades of information just by moving to something new like Outlook or something like this. So that makes it really hard to remove application, and that makes you aware when you do tool switching, or when you jump for a shiny object, that you better don't do because it will affect your overall productivity system and the processes that you're doing every day. Now, satellite apps are a bit easier to replace. I can create a satellite app by simply dragging this and dropping it onto a tool where I get this connection type thing, and here I can select satellite app, and what it does, it moves it outside as the satellite around this core. So this indicates now that Superhuman is a satellite app of Gmail. And what is Superhuman, for those who don't know? It is a tool that cannot work without being connected to another tool. So it needs to have access to your Gmail and represents the emails in a different way, easier to process and so on. This is what this is about. If there is another tool coming along like Spark or any other tools that do the similar things, I could now easily remove this and replace it with a new one that also connects to this core application. So I hope you see the point already. This is my single source of truth for all the information, and I might use tools to represent this information in here in a better way that makes it then easy to understand. Then we used something like Sunsama, or you have something like ICOR, and these are tools that are connecting to several places to represent this. If we're not storing anything in here and we're solely using it to represent data, it could be a satellite app. I could drag this into Todoist, I can drag this into Google Calendar and ClickUp and even Gmail. That's what Sunsama can do. It can pull the information from all this into one place. So I have now one interface where everything comes together and I can plan out my week. And that's why this is a planner application. But you see, I can remove this and my core application all stay intact. All the planning that was done in ClickUp and the knowledge that we have there will remain. All the tasks that I created will remain. The events will remain, nothing will change. Just a holistic view that I had will move away. And now I can think again, can I replace it with something like ICOR or build my own interface as we do now with our PKA tool here. This is personal knowledge management, so you might use something like Obsidian or you use something like Notion. So you can search for these. If this tool is not available, you can create the tools on the fly and then you just drag them in here. Next, let's talk about utility apps. Utility apps are really just standalone applications that you use to improve your workflows. One example would be Raycast that I'm using. It's a tool that I can drag into the utility apps, and now it's just indicating that this is a standalone tool that helps me to improve my workflows. It's not storing data that I need, but it's also not directly hooking into the tools. But I might use something like Claude, which is also a utility app, as long I'm not using this as my PKM and rely on the information being stored here. And that's what we do with the PKM folder. I can drag and drop this onto here and say direct connection. And now you see it's appearing next to this folder, indicating that I'm using this folder with Claude as the utility app. Or I keep it just on the side, not connected to anything, if I just use this as a standalone application, find information quickly and so on. And you can also connect things directly together. So let's assume that we have actually Sunsama as a core application because we also store things in here. I could now say direct connection instead of satellite connection, and now I can connect these things on there. So it is a core application and it is interconnected with other core applications too. And that's how I can visually represent this. And always hover over these connections and simply disconnect to remove the connections. And this is the first layer of laying out your tool stack. What you would do next, the moment you placed it in here, you can click on a tool and you go into the tool page. And here you can give more details how you're using it. You have 3 levels of integration. So maybe you're just testing the tool right now. Maybe you need an alternative, so you're using it but you're not happy with it, or you have it already deeply integrated. So I let it for testing. I go back to my ICOR framework. You see now there is now an indicator that I'm using this tool for testing. So I could this way bring in tools that I'm interested in, but that's not part of my tool stack yet. Although, as I said, this is obviously deeply integrated, but Notion is, for example, something I would be testing. So now we have this indicator here, and on the bottom right you see a filter. So I could filter out all the things that I'm not testing yet. Why does everything else remain here? Well, because they are not set yet. They need to be set to integrate it, and then you see how the things will start disappearing like this. So that's why it's important to go into these tools and start filling out the things. You can add the information how much you pay for this. I don't even know for ClickUp. Then here you can add what devices you're using this on. And then here, this is the more important section. Depending on where you placed it on the ICOR framework, you can have now the secondary categories. All of these categories are taught in the ICOR journey, in the courses. It's based on the ICOR concepts and workflows that we teach for project management and business knowledge management. So we can say we use ClickUp for the idea incubator, for team communication. We are not using it for file storage, but business knowledge. You're using it for goal setting, project management, work streams, and even operations. So you see this is filled out properly. So I can now go back. Okay, let's remove Notion. You just do this by X. I can remove this from the tray and now it's out of my tool stack. So now you see when I go, for example, into Gmail and I go down, you see now PKM, PPM, and BKM. And here's also team communication, and that's where I can now pick the other secondary categories. There's also general use cases where I can select email management. And that's where it's defining how you use these tools. And also when you use the MCP connector to myICOR, it will tell AI how you use these tools too. Going to the folder here, yes, I can say I use the PKA system for my inner world, for deep thinking, journaling, and so on. And now I can think, okay, but I'm not using it for quick capture, for example. And then I find another tool that fills this gap in the secondary categories. So this means if I have something different for capturing, like Tana, I can drag this in here now and define that I use Tana for capturing. And here you see appearing the other tool that is already on the category. When I click this now, I have two tools on the same category. But here I can fill out the gaps. I could now say, just as an example, that I use Tana for all the things that I'm not filled with the other tool. And this is how you get really a deep understanding of your tool stack end to end. If you want to start using the ICOR framework and lay out your own tool stack on it, you can do so in our myICOR application. You just sign up for free and get started there. And let me know in the comments below, did you lay out your tool stack already? Did you identify the redundancies or gaps? Or do you have another method to keep track of what you're using in your productivity system? That's it for this video. I'll catch you up in the next one.